Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Test Site Poetry Series book launch reading. We're so glad that you're all here today, and we hope that you're going to celebrate as much as we do with the reception of these lovely books. I'm Claudia Keelan, editor of Interim and the editor of the series, the Test Site Poetry Series. Before we begin introducing our great readers for today, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Interim and the Test Site Poetry Series, how it came to be. Interim is one of the longest running little magazines in the country. It was started in 1944, before everyone was born, at the University of Washington by Theodore Rethke and then Wilbur Stevens. Wilbur Stevens brought it to UNLV in 1967, before most of you were born, and edited it here until his death at the end of the 1990s. I came shortly thereafter and have been editing it ever since. And I don't know if you know the history of literary magazines very much, but it's remarkable that such a little magazine can have lasted as long as it has. When I first got here, it was stapled. It was a stapled, folded little book, and it was handed in typescript to the printer, who still charges me about that as much as he charged Wilbur Stevens, 20 something years ago. So Interim has come a long way in the past couple of decades, and it's due in no small way to the wonderful graduate students who I've worked with through the years. And the staff of Interim is here today to celebrate the launch of these books with us. And they are Claire Morgan, who's both a managing editor and a web extraordinaire designer. Katie McKenzie, who works wonders on social media, and Jo Olohan, who is Katie's right-hand girl. They're a team. That's the first time we've done it, this team. The tag team. We publish 4 digital issues a year, and 1 print anthology. And the print anthology is generally 200 pages. And for the last 3 years, it's since the election of Donald Trump, it has been devoted to all women's writing and will be for the foreseeable future. It's just about ready to come out again with just a great lineup of women, mostly poets, but essayists as well. The Test Site Poetry Series was an idea that came to me after having lived here in the Mojave for quite a while and watched it get paved over by KB homes in American West. And my sense that the desert was something that people didn't think was alive, that in fact they like to throw their washing machines and old cars into. And I felt this great sense of sorrow for this place that, served as the test site location for many years. And the people who lived downwind from here in Utah suffered tremendous amounts of cancer because of it, et cetera, until they finally stopped testing on a weekly basis, like around the end of the 1980s. So the Mojave and its long suffering formed a part of my consciousness in bringing together the Test Site Poetry Series to promote work that placed the land, the earth, and human beings in loving kindness together. And the 3 books that we are so honored to have been able to choose for the University of Nevada Press to publish are certainly books that pay that kind of homage. And I'm just incredibly grateful to have been a part of this in this way for these couple of years now. There's obviously some people I need to thank. There's always too many people to thank. And the first are the Black Mountain Institute and the English department, who support interim financially when they can. And Black Mountain Institute has been like a rock. There have been years when the university didn't have any money, and that was always interesting. But we've managed to continue publishing and with better production each year. I'd also like to thank the University of Nevada Press for the beautiful jobs that they have done on these books and for working so diligently to make sure that our authors are pleased. So that's who we are. That's what we're doing now. And I would like to introduce my associate editor and friend, Andrew S. Nicholson. And Andrew received a MFA degree from the College of Arts, and and a PhD from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and has been the associate editor of Interim for some years. He's the author of A Lamp Brighter Than Foxfire, which came out in 2016 from the University, the Colorado State University, what is it called? Mountain West series. And it's an absolutely adorable book, beautiful. He's a wonderful translator from the French and a wonderful editor and human being. And I would like to hand it over to Andy now so that he can take it away and introduce everyone else.
Thank you, Claudia. The first poet that we have tonight is Sarah P. Strong. Sarah P. Strong is the author of Mouth of Earth, which is part of Interim's test site poetry series. They're the author of a previous poetry collection, Tour of the Breath Gallery, which was the winner of the Walt McDonald First Book Award, and of two novels, The Fainting Room and Burning the Sea. Their work has appeared in many journals, including The Nation, Hayden's Ferry Review, Rattle, River Styx, the Southwest Review, the Southern Review, and The Sun. A recipient of grants from the Sustainable Arts Foundation and the Connecticut Arts Council, they teach creative writing at the University of Hartford and Central Connecticut State University. They live near New Haven, Connecticut with their spouse and daughter. In the Mouth of Earth, the landscape creates and the landscape is created. Human life in the poems in this book is affected, transformed by humanity's relationship to the earth. The earth is transformed, cared for and harmed by human life on earth. In the poem, When My Daughter Builds with Blocks, a little girl creates the world in imaginative play. She starts with pastures for the animal to graze, a landscape marked by oak rectangles, running the perimeter of her domain like stone walls. Living on earth, the child's art is to reflect that earth, transform it in her vision of the earth. In the central section of Mouth of Earth, Sarah gives us a series of persona poems, voices of people who endured the Dust Bowl and the Great Plains. They give us names for these personas, occupants relying on the earth: Hattie Clemens, farmer; Margaret Sotsey, shepherd; Earl Owens, sharecropper. They give us names, occupations reliant on the human ecosystem of a functioning economy: Eugene Samples, pastor; Joe Martin, bartender; Lula Bowen, housewife and Sunday school teacher. They give us lives transformed into hardship as the earth is transformed. Like the child in When My Daughter Builds with Blocks, the art in the Mouth of Earth is the art of being a creation creating. In the poem Mobile, reflection and recreation, nature and history, earth and art become one. I saw the real blue Danube once, muddy with rain in Vienna, a river whose headwaters start before the Roman Empire and run through 2 world wars, bearing fascism and Freudian psychology and Schnitzel, all downriver to pour into the Black Sea of our seemingly endless need to keep playing with matches to see what will catch light. Jennifer Given has written about the mouth of Earth, the themes of environmental ruin and the infect and plight of humans on this earth feel urgent rather than gloomy in these poems, a feat Strong pulls off by getting past and present in disparate places and experience to resonate and chime. Mary Sivist has written, these poems, like divining rods, find healing waters in the dust bowls of our toughest landscapes, intertwining parenthood, history, the body, and contemporary ecological and political concerns. I'm very pleased to introduce Sarah P. Strong.
Can everybody hear me okay? I hope so, because I can't see any faces. Somebody turn on your camera and give me the thumbs down if you can't hear. Thank you.
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction, Andrew. And thank you, Claudia, for just being a wonderful advocate for these poems, both at Interim and as the series editor of Test Site, along with Joanne Banducci, who's the managing editor of University of Nevada Press, and Iris Saltis, who designed this really beautiful cover. I don't know how well you can see it. If you buy the book, you'll see it better, but it's a bowl of eggs, and one of the eggs is cracked. The albumen is showing, and it's not clear. Is a chick going to come out? Is a live chick going to come out? Is it just another egg? And I really love the cover and the suspense of the cover and the mouth of that egg. So thank you, Iris, for such a lovely job. When I started writing these poems, it was out of a need to come to grips with how fast the earth is changing and the fact that it is changing because of human action, human greed, and human inaction, and human decisions or the lack thereof. So when I started looking closely at how we as 21st century Americans engage with nature, I also started noticing the ways that we don't engage with it, and that sometimes the way that we disconnect ourselves still has within it a longing to be connected to the natural world. And the first poem I'm going to read, Mobile, which Andrew quoted a little bit, kind of gets at that. It also gets at the fact that when you have a baby, you get a lot of gifts made out of plastic, shaped in ways that you never would have dreamed existed. Okay, Mobile. It seems it's not enough for us to love the earth the way we loved as infants a milky nipple. What the teacher meant when he told his students, carry water in a sieve. No one could, until at cliff's edge he showed them, flung the metal basket into the Pacific. But we don't sink into the world like that. We rise up from the earth's breast and crane our necks over the grasses, distracted by the glimpse of shiny things. You can see it in the baby by 8 months. She'll be nursing along in the garden of contentment until some glint of motion snags her eye, and the world not even named yet. That blur of green is not yet flock of wild parakeets in northern coastal city. The pink flash not yet classified as musical mobile of plastic ponies, a baby shower gift I could not bring myself to keep. The music box rendered the Blue Danube Waltz as a series of electronic beeps while the ponies rotated, trailing a squishy plastic smell that reminded me variously of asthma attacks, factory workers in China, and Barbie dolls. I saw the real Blue Danube once, muddy with rain in Vienna. a river whose headwaters start before the Roman Empire and run through 2 world wars, bearing fascism and Freudian psychology and Schnitzel all downriver to pour into the black sea of our seemingly endless need to keep playing with matches, to see what will catch light. I've heard the real Blue Danube too, once, from a man sitting alone on the edge of the stage that was the 20th century, plucking the notes of the waltz on a classical guitar with such exquisite tension between the sweeping music of the river and the tiny syncopated pattern of dancing feet that at least one person in the sparse and hurried lunch hour audience put down their cell phone and wept. Magpies like shiny objects too, as do starlings, blue jays, crows. Perhaps the commonality persists in us like our desire for flight, the way a line of music can persist, until someone fashions the memory of a time those notes flooded the banks of our feelings with a mechanical ghost of itself that plays us at our plastic worst. When what we wanted was the green breath of those first fields, blown toward us by the moving shapes of horses. This next poem was written during a springtime monsoon on the East Coast where I live. And in the midst of these torrential rains, I was seeing the place I used to live, California, engulfed in wildfires. The poem is called Fire Burns Grass, and the game referred to in the poem is an imagined version of rock, paper, scissors. On the 3rd day, fire burns grass. On the 3rd day of the wildfire, she answers. I press the ancient phone receiver to my head. This phone, so old, I think I'm talking to the dead sometimes. Talk to me, talk to me. She says, remember when we changed the game? 3 fingers at her lips meant water. My hand, upturned, half opened, stood for grass. Her fist, bursting into fingers, meant flames. Yes, talk to me. The phone at my face like an oxygen mask. But not the rules. We kept the rules the same. Grass drinks water, water puts out fire, fire burns grass. Will you have to leave your house? She laughs at that. Her laugh, a match struck in a rainstorm, impossible spark of old longing inside me. Outside my window, the springtime is coming apart. Sheets of rain clog the sewer with downed cherry blossoms. Are you still there? I'm thirsty, but I can't reach the sink. The phone's umbilicus is already stretched taut. Outside, a gust of wind tears a branch from the dogwood. Oh yes, rooted to my spot. This next poem is called Border. And when it talks about a coyote, it means not only the animal, but also a man who, for a large fee, takes undocumented immigrants across the border from Mexico into the United States, often exploiting them along the way as they make the journey. Border. Things different over there. The words for themselves different. The things themselves all the same. She put her flesh in the mouth of a coyote so he would take her across to mark the place where someone died trying. 2 white sticks, the ghost of cactus and the clouds back and forth. Over our heads, an edge of thinking beyond which we don't go to save face, which is burning. the other country so close, one good arm could break a window. This next poem, the title is Stalin, which is also the first line. And Stalin is, apocryphally at least, the one who said, "One death is a tragedy, 1 million deaths is a statistic." A quote that takes on added meaning in these times that it didn't have when I wrote the poem. Stalin is the title of a book, over 700 pages, 2 inches thick in paperback, that I read every word of, taking notes. I got the only A in the class, the professor told me later. 30 years have passed, and what I remember now is that Trotsky was killed with an ice axe at his desk in Mexico. Of the 20 million people who died under Joseph Stalin, I know the manner and location of just one, which leaves a lot of bare feet slowly freezing on frozen ground, starvation, bodies unaccounted for, except by the meaninglessness of a number whose actual representation of anything is as beyond me as the hundreds of thousands of words I once read about Stalin. While I'm thinking this, 2 naked 3-year-olds run shrieking past, watching the bright flash of their limbs in watery motion, the peeled stream of their bodies pouring through the living room of this house, where there is no indication there will ever be a midnight knock on the front door. It strikes me. 200 or 200,000 years ago, a naked child's body playing looked as it does now, bursting and waving like a field when all the crops are ripe, and also humble, a seeker of humble things, warmth, something to drink when thirsty, tenderness, and softly incapable of planning harm. This next poem is, I would say, PG-13. So if there's anybody under 13 listening, I don't know, cover your ears, kids. Diner. Our special today is pancakes served with maple-flavored corn syrup and decorated with maraschino cherries and pineapple rings, which we can arrange into the shape of a smiley face, if you would like that. I'll have the eggs. Today we also have the blueberry blintzes, which come rolled up on a plate like little dolls in blankets, the way you wish your mother used to make them but never did, because she was always too hungover on Saturday mornings to get out of bed and your dad had moved to another state. Just the eggs, please. Or perhaps you'd like the dieter's special, fruit cocktail and a scoop of low-fat cottage cheese, whose scientific relationship to weight loss is non-existent, but eating it might make you feel virtuous and in control. Bring me the eggs already. Yes, yes, battery cages, beaks sawed off, and a cup of coffee. I know endangered species habitats wrecked by my daily addiction to caffeine, or never mind the coffee, I'll take a glass of water. Our water has been treated for your dining safety with fluoride and chlorine to protect you from dysentery. Would you like ice and a straw? I feel a bit sick, actually. I'll just have some dry toast. Perhaps you would like my puerile hand laid on your clammy forehead. What I would like is the very tip of your tongue held against my closed lips until our bodies become the same temperature. I could also crawl across this table and let you peel me out of this cheap polyester uniform without any reference to the ensuing tableau's visual likeness to last month's photo spread in Hustler. Could I get that with a paper napkin blindfold and a side of skin sticking to melamine? Yes, but it's extra. In that case, I'll just have the toast. but with a pat of butter soaking through its gold aluminum wrapper, like the sun going down over a major metropolitan city in America. I'll bring you the check, folded into a white origami crane. Three more poems. This next one's called The Apollos, and it references not only the Greek god of prophecy and healing, but more specifically, it's a reference to the Apollo space program, which you may remember was designed to put men on the moon. And in total, the Apollo missions put 12 Americans up there during the course of the years that the program was running. The Apollos. If all 12 went back again to stand where they could see this small sphere we call home, rising blue and gray and distantly warm, small as a raindrop tongued from a lover's face, and with that long view of the cloudy, indistinct, and lovely shapes suffering assumes when seen from a distance, how would these tiny props, vanished rivers, cracked reactors, bullets, cops, cathedrals in piles of gray stones, our rising wisps of smoke, our lead-leached bones appear? Looking down like that, could one feel a shift in his chest? Could he, blessed with no particular divinity, become, by virtue of this gaze alone, some sort of God? Albeit a human one who doesn't really know the fullness of his powers or their limits, save that he can't be everywhere at once, and that he can only see at most the lit side of a face, and that if we don't weigh him down, he floats. I used to have a Dharma teacher, a Buddhist meditation teacher, who liked to say, when things get really bad, go outside. Even if you weren't in nature, just going outside and looking up at the sky can help. And failing that, look at a picture of being in nature, as I do in this poem. Sunflowers. I'm looking at a photograph of two people I love, standing in a group of sunflowers taller than their heads. Her face does not look like the face of someone whose shitty childhood could form the librettos for several grand operas, as his does not look like the face of a man who's just been diagnosed with cancer. No, they look like people who have spent the day on their knees in a garden, who know the patience all soil will teach you. Above them, the faces of the sunflowers look the way things look when they have been loved all their lives, their petals unfurled in a halo whose peeled sunlight is the color I would choose if someone said, find a shade for joy. Before I read this last poem, I'd like to say that this book is dedicated not only to my partner and our child, but to everyone who is courageously using their voices and their bodies to be the mouth of earth. You have my deepest respect and gratitude, and I hope that we all persist and endure. The poems in the last half of the book, some of them kind of call back to poems in the first half of the book. And this poem is kind of a callback to the one I read earlier, The Apollos, about looking down from the moon. After this, Earth could become a worry stone in the pocket of space, or a mood ring on the finger of a newly minted god. Perhaps a sucker for a sore throat, sore from saying again and again the same thing. Or a locket at the neck of an aurora. Inside, old photographs of icebergs, that blue cracking open to sing. Thank you.
Thank you for that reading, Sarah. That was marvelous. Our next reader is Derek Thomas Dew. Derek Thomas Dew is the author of Riddlefield, which is his debut collection, and is the winner of Interim's Test Site Poetry Series Prize, 2019's Interim's Test Site Poetry Series Prize. His poetry has been published in a variety of journals and anthologies, including Interim, Twickenham Notes, The Maynard, The Curator, Two Hawks Quarterly, Tempered Ruins Press, Cathexis Northwest Press, Button Eye Review, and elsewhere. He is a winner of an Oregon Opportunity Grant and an Omnidon Publishing Workshop Scholarship. He lives in Oregon. From the beginning of Riddlefield, Derek locates us in a setting and colors that setting with tension. An unnamed small town placed near a dam set to be blown. River flood and massive flood, dammed lake and bathtub, mermaid and sinking Titanic are all associatively linked throughout the book by the bursting dam. Literal submersion and the sense of submersion blur in poems like Mainland. A dam of cattails, a dam 10,000 feet high. Swim like a baby, he said, it would be a holiday. All the boy had done will be the bottom of a lake in the V of his arms. Throughout these poems is the presence of Walter, a figure identified and co-named with the flood, that threatening and destructive force in poems like Tunnel Music. Did Walter the flood give me my true tongue when even my mother would lie to me? And Liar's Dice. Walter the flood made me swear not to snitch on him if my mom found the magazine. Located in its setting, the land, the personal, town history, and town economy merge one into the other. Consider the merging of personal and historic event, natural and manufactured, literal and figurative, in these three lines from Ring Up Dawn. How can I use the word and if I have to wrap masking tape around my wedding ring? If I touch the dam, will it die like a cave, or will a fault line appear signaling a new cave? Moon over welder is an ageless corner rivet. Soon we'll need boats. Donald Revell has written, in Riddlefield, we are made witness to a miracle of the new millennium. America, rising out of its actual soil, covered in flowers and malice, music and weaponry, into a body wholly new. Sherwin Bitsui has written that Riddlefield is replete with lines that fuse unlike dimensions, relentlessly juxtaposing realms and ideas that create a new kind of knowing. Here, collage and stream of consciousness reveal the interconnectedness inherent in all things. I am very pleased to introduce Derek Thomas Dew.
Hi there. Hope everybody can hear me okay. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that very generous introduction. It was very, very amazing to have folks just kind of plug into what you're trying to do, understand what you're trying to do. So Riddlefield is more or less based on trauma. I need my soul to be a livable place. And so I look for the sort of the horrors. I seek the moments when the horrors of that place are subsumed in the undulations and the chemistries of like the environment around me. and are thus made a inevitable and a natural peace. So it's about kind of meandering around the puncture wound, and observing what's falling into the puncture wound. You know, it's not going for bullseye, but trying to hit the wall as far away as you can, and that becomes kind of its own bullseye. Anyways, I figured I would start with mainland, since it was just quoted. Andrew just quoted it in that lovely intro. And I want to thank Iris Saltis for the cover. It was beautiful. And everybody at Interim who's been so kind and generous and patient with me. This is just an honor and a thrill, so thank you. This poem's called Mainland, and this whole book is 1,000 different voices going on at once. She'll cut off all her hair, mainland, mainland. She'll cut off all her hair the day they blow the dam. The boy at church told her some trees don't collect water with their roots. At midnight in the canyon, she was in her little bra trying to dance for him. Before they could kiss, a cow went into labor and screamed, and the boy ran. A dam of cattails, a dam 10,000 feet high. Swim like a baby, he said. It will be a holiday. All the boy has done will be the bottom of a lake in the V of his arms. First, there was only the candle's flame crawling the bathwater. Then, traveling the rim of the tub, a light like the one atop his Jeep. It's really just a big wall, and when we finish it, we'll be given a new shirt. Figured I'd try to just kind of plow through some of these. They're all pretty short. The Mermaid Club. The Mermaid Club. They were giving out popcorn on the den's last day. Little battleground mermaids painted on the sidewall. And watching my friend love my mother on the wall. A tiny rogue hair. When everyone said son, you thought daughter. Do I ask for grace? Some kind of cooing? Walter went an end to all portraits. How is he made me feel indebted to show me my name? When I was little, I thought as the crow flies meant desire. The whole town dried up like a payphone. To end it, he rode into the mermaids painted on the sidewall. So next one's called Gambit. Gambit. The cock droops, the linoleum shines, the moon outside, and unknowing, finds its coin in the brow of a riverbank before leaving the field to its corn. The white-skinned boy sinks before a rusty gate. The gate rattles off a crow. A young mother circles a cracked driveway. Dried shards of stem and pinched arnica in her feet. The wind ties clouds to sand with a common lash. After being zipped back up, the boy is in bed and hears a jet cross the sky. So distance is men standing and talking where men have died. Somebody learns to crave this offense like the sting of ice. Clumps of fern feed black trees, which are where one looks when wishing to look at nothing. The river traps the dead in a brick lip. A man's room is balsam smoke silking past flakes of green bud caught in black tassels, hanging from a high table, and charred horseflies in the mouths of candles. Promise to draw breath is to find the choir in stone. So again, the idea is to map the surrounding of the impact zone. Watch coat. On the edge of Osvaldo's ranch, there's a little wooden toll booth. If I run there and stand in it and shut the door, will the flood never reach me? Lying upside down in Ervil's truck, it looks like a flute coming down from heaven. Might it cut that final deep like a watch coat, breach the surface, and burst into flames? I would gladly burn my shirt. A countryside dies for a lack of lamp. In need of a windlass, one continuous jaw, black night, burning ship. A waitress at the cafe says there's a lake on top of a mountain where shipwrecks pop up. How many little shapes do you need to be? A single tow booth should be efficient. Orange peels ride the chop on the surface of the water, 100 calves deep. Soon, the first light, and I notice I'm sewn into my clothes. This next one is called Griddle 6. Griddle 6. I found a table and chairs caught inside a girl, caught inside cold sun. Stray dogs are cop cars like wasps taking root in a hair salon. A bottle cap lodged in asphalt is its own limousine. Her age is in her neck. She mimics the snore of the oldest woman at the bus station. White every third mountain is a tooth. Am I as old as the fathers in movies? I've said yes someone to someone lost to road and a tan line. My compass is a boy who needs a compass, as well as to get the cheese to Griddle 6. The biggest embarrassment to royalty is rain. The way you describe a door indicates if you'd open it. All right, getting near the end here. Placeholder. The mirror opened my brow, but I had napkins from the cafe. The dusk is any army without a drummer in the little toll booth. Blue masking tape holds the mirror together. The toll booth like a boy finding the street in his father's face. The mermaids came off the wall to drink the dam's cracks. The body of a virgin eats the trees from the ground up. Every toll booth's vow and splinters across the mermaid's breasts. A boy shades his head. A virgin enters a tree and tries to drink. All silence is kept, are not kept in silence. The mermaids are washed away before reaching the toll booth. All right. Figured I'd dedicate one to the sort of amorphous and yet semi-solid antagonist of the whole thing, Walter. And, you know, this is for anybody who's taken a couple, taken their lickings, you know, and tried to keep on going and keep finding meaning and reason and keep healing and keep forgiving. I'm Walter. Some stretch their legs out and place their feet far to claim domain. Some keep their legs together and their knees half topple to one side. Some cross their legs and are not unpleasant to speak with. I've made towns of fathers out of small afraid boys who peel the stickers off my model helicopters while my force has no beginning and no end, an action that has always been a memory, like an average man in town. I had wanted to give, if not mine, when was he, of my little intensities, and now I never know what in the flesh I had wanted to share until broken like flesh, a fever tans his wrist, rich in dead yawn of a trash truck, moaning along through an alley on the last days of California. Okay. Think maybe time for a couple more, maybe two more. They're kind of short, so you know. Let's see. All right. This one's called, thank you everybody for watching. This one's called Between Churches. The theater once made music for loquats. Every balcony spilled into its own echo, like repetition is the nausea that brings clarity. An usher boy sneaks into the bathroom right after. His favorite singer has been there just to smell her uninterrupted. Like repetition is the nausea that brings clarity, the young woman who teaches senior water aerobics has a miscarriage with 30 elderly women watching. In the pool at the health club, the burgundy ribbon mushrooming around their wrinkled knees, like a fight you were in but can't remember the details of, the red water is octopi. All right. Okay, I'll just do two more, I guess. That's cool. This is called Very. Very. Something lived in that refuses to stay in me. A desert twilight painted on an old van. To boost young strength, a father fakes injury when he shakes his son's hands. Very is lived in through likelihood only or degree only. When the son becomes a man, he studies the back of another man's neck, keeping to himself what he discovers there. By language, we mean agreement, like how every little clearing in the forest is a living room. If there was a shout, it couldn't do. The man's neck is every wrong name for the bend of the train. Now this is me, after his hand met my own. Very was degree only. Child gone unto skin gone of my stories, a surface that moves like a parlor travels. Rings clink together. How odd to be a pregnant woman in Louisiana just waking up. All right. Figure, I'll just do the reliquaries and then I'll do the afterword. They're real short. Hope I have time. Reliquary 1. Anything far away is a lighthouse. The opera singer, whom people only want to hear hum, spots one on the water off in the distance. It's actually the locksmith's roof peeking above the flood, but nobody has to know. Later, he walks out to a balcony, hears a loud crack, and watches the calico horses scatter through the trees. Somewhere on the side of the road, there are bees and a hawk. Reliquary 2. Don't bear anywhere because he may not. Flood hand, peanut and peasant. Summer wants the weakest shingle. I feel safer, walking the white fence. Gather gander garden, and the mermaids painted on the sidewall. With a mask on, not every portrait is deaf. Reliquary 3. My wedding rings clink on the bottle I try to sip from before opening. A hawk rips the violin that keeps the meadow. Silver corn sheaf asleep in a fist. Long ago, me and my mother had a happy first night in a new apartment. Soon after, I inherited my sister's bedroom. You can't draw a beach. Honor is to never sneeze. Reliquary 4. I painted a white line on the gravel, but the stones walked away. As I went down the road, the old-timer approaching the mailbox was whistling. What a tune, I thought. And though pierced by birdsong, it followed. Before long, I was at the docks, burning laundry, but still the whistle followed. Mice mossed the trumpet. The day came train bending into the tunnel before connected eye, 2 or 3 moths singing their small hearts for the wet dusk and lights flashing green. Down the road, it's all this neon, but down the fence, the same green whistle. By now, we've laughed at either side of the volcano. We touched the spot on the owl where the moon might have an ear. I painted a white line across the whale, but didn't know a single man at sea. All right, this is the ender. Afterword, it's called. It's actually the last poem in the thing, so. Afterword. A child's bare back twitches away from the cold back of a chair. The lines at the party have not met. There is no music, and there is nothing behind the house. Each crescendo like a man taking a deep breath as you pass by him in a car. Thank you, Claudia, and everybody for arranging this. I want to give a special, my amazing late wife, soulmate, couldn't be here, but I want to dedicate the whole deal to Michelle, who changed my life, saved my life, and believed in me. When you couldn't pay me enough to believe in myself. And so, and I want to say, Sarah, that was great reading, and I look forward to Kyce, and thank you all.
Thank you, Derek. That was beautiful.
Cool. Thank you. I'm gonna click off.
Okay, bye.
Yeah. Thank you.
Marvelous reading, Derek. Claudia, you're on video. Did you want to say
I
something?
just wanted to say hi to Derek face to face. I'm
Hi
going to go
back.
in now. Bye.
Really marvelous reading, Derek. Thank you so much. Our third and final reader for tonight is Kyce Bello. Kyce is the author of Refugia, which is the winner of Interim's 2018 Test Side Poetry Series Prize, and was the winner of the 2020 New Mexico Arizona Book Award, which I believe just recently happened. That was announced recently, yeah? Her poems have appeared in the Kenyon Review, Boston Review, About Place Journal, Anomaly Literary Journal, the Raven Chronicles, House Journal of Poetry, and Sonora Review. She lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Refugia is attentive to the unknown, to the surprise that visits us. What is intuited, sensed, is privileged in these poems over any attempt to dominate the poem by will. In cusp with various visitations, Kyce writes, I prowl the kitchen, the page, the forest. I don't set traps. What I thought this was about is secondary to what I sensed. The periphery zigzags toward me while I wait. Allowing the periphery, this unknown, the surprise, the visitation to enter the poems looks like a spiritual practice in this book. The language of the religious and spiritual practices does appear throughout these poems, from ashram to Sabbath to Persephone. The language comes from no single spiritual practice. Instead, the spiritual becomes an encountering of divinity within the world in these poems. With Kyce writing in Origin of the Apple, I'm sometimes religious, but I do not know if it is God I believe in, or apples, or if there is any difference. Outside orthodoxy, the periphery, the not known visits, itself divine. From Grail Story, beyond the scriptures, there is more to believe and open-handedly praise. If Kyce's poems are prayer, they are not prayers to an external divinity to intercede. They are prayers for one's own openness, to let the world arrive, to allow for one's own divinity to arise in one's interconnection with others. From the ashram at Lee Mill Road, before we left those woods, we gathered every sunrise to pray and belong to one another. In the green dogwood arms of Virginia, my own name was holy. Maggie Smith has written about Refugia. What is left of the world we are given. What Refugia makes of it, we pass on to our children and survive all else to survive for. Amy Whitmore has written, kinder than Robinson Jeffers, Bello extends her sympathy to the transience of human existence, wherein we are all ultimately refugees. The equanimity of Bello's vision is direly needed in the ongoing environmental crises of the world. I'm very pleased to introduce Kyce Bello.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was beautiful and unexpected. I am having a moment of sadness for our big book launch in March that didn't happen, because I'm seeing now how much I missed out on not getting to meet Sarah and Derek and Claudia and all the amazing interim staff, or whoever was going to be there in person. It was the first major COVID casualty to the literary world. And I am grateful to be here tonight as part of this community. Claudia, I want to especially thank you for your vision in the Test Site Poetry Series. When I first read the call for submissions, I felt as if someone was describing my work in a way that I did not even yet understand it, but knew was something I could answer. And I'm just so grateful that you put the earth, put our human communities, and put our poetry together in this way, so that the incredible work of Sarah and Derek, myself, and all those who are yet to come can just flourish in the world. So glad to be here. Okay. This is my book, Refugia. Oh, the new one is matte version, the second edition that came out, so it's not so shiny. The art is by Aaron Morse, and I just want to thank him for that, and all the amazing people I worked with at the University of Nevada Press to bring it to life. They really made it a joy to be creating a first book. Grass Widow. Say there is a cleaving that skims big blue stem into grass drifted hills. The dowager's body a sway as she harvests nettles, then trembles toward last light. In 1871, locusts covered the prairie with the sound of a million small scissors snipping green to its knees. On relict grasslands in Iowa, milkweed and owl clover cosset untidily into bloom. Small mammals furrow muck into trenched seed beds, and I am full of babies. My breast tunes its small ear to a particular cry drawn from crested ridges. The land widens, curves, reduces. There are departures that leave no question as to who is left behind and with how little. This book slowly took shape over several years, and it definitely is reckoning with belief. It's reckoning with the loss of forest ecosystems in the West, which is the kind of the one ecological devastation that's happening for me personally. We all have ours in whatever region we live in. We have something, the fires or the floods. And it's also reckoning with inner landscapes, especially as they relate to family. And it took time for me to understand how all of these were threading together and how they could be a manuscript. And it was really the term refugia that united them. And I just want to tell you, because you might not know, as I once did not know what that means. It's a Latin term used by ecologists and biologists to describe places where plant and animal species can survive periods of climatic change. And once there's been some restabilization, those species can then redisperse and hopefully continue. And I spent a lot of time in the studying the research on that. And it carried me through my own despair. The back of the book calls me a bright and hopeful voice in the current conversation about climate change. And I think that's true as long as that means grief-stricken and utterly devastated. Refugia 2. The Refugia poems thread through the whole book. This is number 2. My face a furrow. The creek shanks haltered in birdsong. On the mountain, late winter becomes a cape fanned open. It seems a congregation of rivulets ravishing the watershed and then gone. What is the shape of loss as it robes and disrobes us? Cars harpoon the road, doors slam. My daughter has a birthday, and all the gifts I gave but did not name peer back at me from her arms. This bed, this meal, this embrace. I task her with tallying drought as it withers and ferns her fingertips. Our thirst a palm-sized map etched in broken lines. Grief leaps from the gorge bridge. We call it a magpie, call out as it becomes a flock. as the flock frays in flight. The trouble with belief. We think we know the best place to gather chanterelles, how to sit out lightning bursts above timberline. I've been waiting for autumn to start singing, and meanwhile the ash and elm have quietly gilded their leaves. Every time I talk about the trouble with belief, my friends look away. All I'm saying is, what could it mean that the robes we wear can be taken off and on? Or maybe it's simple. Trees go from bare leaf to bud, green leaf to gone, in tides of adornment and scarcity. We did not find those bright mushrooms when we scoured the mountain. Only swaths of burnt forest, only thunder cracking beneath our feet. I wrote this poem, Grail Story, after the last election. I'm going to read it tonight as a prayer and a balm for us on the eve of this next one. Grail Story. It's referencing the story of the Fisher King from Parsifal, one of the medieval Arthurian tales. Grail Story. From the swallowtail morning, I take up my list of whom to forgive. If you ask me to hammer this engine back to life, you will hear how we forged our fool's walk into gold, how our fractured bones were set into ladders spanning a splintered forest, and we lived for years with the hair raised on the backs of our necks. Beyond the scriptures, there is more to give credence and open-handedly praise. Please empty this kettle teeming with bones, as if it were a loom, and we charged to dress the wound by asking 10,000 times, what ails thee? Watch how it stills the wind, how it heals, holding knives that open but don't carry us away. So I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, just across the valley from the Los Alamos National Labs, which has its own relationship to the test sites of the world. It's where the atomic bomb was first made. And they also have done some research on tree mortality. And there was a team that is, I guess, colloquially known as the tree coroners that really made an art of killing trees in order to study the impact of heating and drought on them. So they have big, elaborate, like plastic shells that they put around piñons in the forest and turn up the heat in them and keep the water from reaching the roots. And the good news was that the trees were really strong and more resilient than they thought, but the bad news was they predicted that all the conifer trees in New Mexico would be gone by the end of this century. This poem is about them and about the trees and about our children. The tree coroners. In laboratories, they count tree rings, graph snow melt and needle fall. For decades, they've watched 2 degrees determine by which means a tree will choose to die, hunger or thirst. The delicate doorway of each pine needle's mouth hanging open or snapped closed. I spend the last hours of sleep looking over my shoulder, dream of resurrection ferns unfurling in southeastern woods. Which boast to believe, my own or their malediction? Might as well ask which forest will claim my ashes, the one I coax into a chase or the one I run alongside, the one I walked in before you were born. Mm. Refugia 5. 2.6 million years of alluvia collect into a new land. Mountain avens and musk ox cross-pollinate, reproduce, and persist until major disturbing events alter their ecological trajectory. After fires 1, 2, and 3, the mountains ceased to breathe. I love making love in the aspen groves every autumn, but of course we are barely a consequence. Our toes digging into leaf drifts, the water just out of reach. The forest succeeds itself in waves we watch unfold. Pages of quercus, then quaking aspen rewrite the contoured book, and the mountain turns to something other and unknown, growing beyond us. Refugia 4. They don't need to be in order. I think that's okay. Refugia 4. Overwintering theories abound, with lessons I will apply to taming my petulance. Still, I burn when crossed. During the last glacial, fireweed went in pursuit of soil, long leaves ragged along the same crags they have rambled over for epochs. Paleopollen indicates shore pines walking away from ice, and though I fret over the fate of fir and pinon, a biologist with a baby at her breast says these mountains were not long ago populated by different trees altogether. She says, grief is losing what we know of home, while the land drifts into 1,000 small harbors and leaves us to our short lives, our quick tempers. Gazing on the mid-morning in an expression of solidarity. Just now I noticed my ordinary face origami into and then upon itself. With each new fold, the creature of it changes. Turtle into crane, into the way my gaze once lifted to yours. I pluck grains from the salt cellar. Prepare a feast that tastes of lick and spoil. The river ribbons over rock in that other tongue taken up by beaver. Oh no, it's not a tail slapping water. It's rain on my roof. It took years to become this lovely. Okay, let me get my bearings here. There's a few kind of easier poems, little lighter, little easier to understand what the poet is talking about. So let me see if we can take a break with one of those. Something seasonal. They're all seasonal. Oh, here we go. Summer ends with ringing. I'm trying to write my way into a Sabbath and won't let this poem leave the house on Saturday except on foot and wearing a good hat. I don't want friends anymore, just people who mail me leaves folded into envelopes, who send letters wrapped in green the way a New England forest wraps overhead like a call, a rooftop, a breathing, leafy cage. Maybe it's time to break the waters and see if there is a clapper in the cracked bell or not. I call it a bell, This late season when morning glories carouse the house until they fold petals and lie still. The sunflowers all dark, seedy hearts, their stalks drooping beneath the small weight of goldfinches, so thorough in their hunger. I think I want to read, I have three more. One more Refugia poem, and then two others. Refugia 8. After her birthday, my 7-year-old notices her sparkling pink balloon sinking day by day a little lower. One night, near the end, balloon floating at her ankles, she sobs her revelation. She knows she will wake to scraps on the floor, deflated mylar shining on a string. As she sleeps, I almost drive back to the dollar store where boys huff helium in the wind. Imagine the beautiful deceit of life evermore, balloony, fat again, bumping the ceiling, a new ribbon curled in my child's hand. What I would give to switch this and every loss, even when the remains have transfigured into their own unexpected beauty. Even if, in the morning, she will be ready to love whatever ruin they become. She was. She survived. And I think we will too. Origin of the Apple. I think this poem is the one that just brings it all together. I'm throwing it all in. We're talking about 10 things at once, so go wherever you go with it. It is inspired by by the great botanist Nikolai Vavilov, who was a Russian botanist who in the 1920s set off across the globe in search of the origin place of the major foods, grains, fruits, every growing plant. He went to find where it came from, and he gathered specimens and seeds and roots and every part of it to bring back to his incredible seed bank that is still in existence today. And there is an incredible story about this place and about this person. I don't have time to tell it, but perhaps you'll look it up. Nikolai Vavilov provided to me with the epigraph for this poem. Origin of the apple. The center of origin is where the greatest diversity occurs. At Almaty, I could see with my own eyes the origin of the apple. Nikolai Vavilov. 1. Every family is a mountain nooked with hollows. Oh, I have to tell you more about Almaty because it's just, you have to know a little bit more. It's this mountain range, it's a city on the edge of the Tian Shan Mountains, which form the border, or are the border between China and Kazakhstan. And this mountain range is the birthplace of the apple fruit family, like plums and pears and a variety of other stone fruits. And they grow wild there, and it's Eden-esque and incredible. And it is, like everything, endangered today by the city of Almaty growing into it, and by climate change and deforestation. So let's go back. Every family is a mountain nooked with hollows, variations of trunks twisted and rising on the long slope, bud and bloom, pip and slowly ripened fruit. Deep encrusted ridges, the first two become the rest. 2. If I could trace this body back far enough through teasel beds and clear-cut meadows, I would be home. familiar to the people who look up in surprise at the stranger who wears their face, who carried a bucket, it must be milk, across the fields to their table. 3. I am sometimes religious, but I do not know if it is God I believe in, or apples, or if there is any difference. I look at this forest, even in its falling, and am brought to my knees. 4. Here is origin, fruit on the mountain. Where God created the apple can be anything. It is what color it chooses, what flavor it wants. Wife to whichever wandering bee with pollen-dusted feet it pleases. Every star-seeded apple ever set on your plate was born from this place. 5. Every thread you unravel from your dress splits in its threshing. Each ancestor whose name you learn is undone before you reach her face. You will never know the feast from which you were born. Thank you again to everyone at Interim, Claudia, Andy, Katie, Joe, Claire, to my fellow readers, and to all who are still here with us to hear this last poem. Thank you. Rite of first refugium. Refugium is the singular of refugia, which is the plural for those places where plants can survive. And this was the first poem I wrote upon learning this term, and it includes another word, relict, which is what led me to refugia. Relict are species that are survivors, like turtles are relict with a T at the end from the dinosaur age or what have you, okay? Rite of first refugium. If you cannot find a Snowdon lily in Snowdonia, try the Alp lily close to home. Try singing oriri, oriri all winter. First frost is not on the list of flowers with no smell, but thrums cold, flagrant in my hand all the same. Not fragrance, though it surrounds, and not the exact name for loss, but something similar. Women bear swells named breast, named belly, that refugium that survives demolition, birth after birth. Make me a figure with a womb and relict heart. Make me the seam that holds tattered land together, and let me be the speaker that sings, rise, rise, all across this shapely ground. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kyce. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Derek. Oh, it was just wonderful. It was so wonderful to hear the poems finally. And thank all of you who came and joined us to hear the readings today. And stay tuned to Interim's Facebook for things that we're going to be doing in the future. We hope to be doing a lot more with video and audio on our Facebook page and in our magazine. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and